Hello and welcome. I'm Pallavi Sharma and you're watching BIZWORLD Weekly, a show where we bring you the top stories of the week from across the world, unfiltered and on point, from economy to politics. Your destination to stay updated on the week that is here. Let's start with the market check. Indian equity indices ended on a weak note with Nifty down 0.68% and Sensex down 0.07%. Nifty was at 24,718.6 points and Sensex was at 81,118.6 points. Biggest Nifty losers were Adani Ports, ITC, SBI, IndusInd Bank and Hindalco, and the gainers were Bharat Electronic, ONGC, Tech Mahindra, TCS and Wipro. Except media and realty, all sectoral indices were in red. BSE mid-cap and small-cap shed 0.3% each. Indian rupee ended 49 paise lower at 86.09 per dollar on June 13th. Gold prices crossed the 1 lakh mark again today. In Delhi, prices of 24 karat gold were at 1.01 lakh rupees per 10 grams and 22 karat gold was at 93,100 rupees per 10 gram. On June 12th, India witnessed one of the deadliest aircraft crashes in history. The accident occurred in Ahmedabad. The plane had 242 passengers, and out of which only one miracle survivor was left. One man survived. So what happened is that the plane, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, one which has never crashed before, relatively a new aircraft, only about 10 years old, had taken off, but the takeoff was not as usual. And minutes later, the plane exploded after a crash near a medical college hospital, where reports say that some doctor interns were also killed and injured. It was all sudden. The plane was heading to London. The manifest says that there were 53 British nationals, 1 Canadian national, 7 Portuguese, and 169 Indians on this plane. The plane took off from Ahmedabad. The takeoff time was 1:38 p.m. The altitude was 625 feet and then it started dropping. The pilots knew something was wrong when they took off, so they immediately issued a mayday call to the ATC. A mayday call is like an SOS call, a call of distress. And when the ATC got back to the aircraft, there was no response. So how did all this happen? What happened to the uncrashable 787-8 Dreamliner? As per various visuals, the plane's nose was upwards, but the rear is where the problem was. It kept dropping. Now, this means that the problem was in gaining lift, meaning takeoff and holding the aircraft in the air. So if there is enough lift, then it goes all well. If it is not gaining enough lift, then there might be a crash. Many experts have their own theories, a bird strike or an engine failure, but there is no official confirmation about these informations yet by investigators. So we'll wait for that. Now let's talk about the plane. It was made its first flight in 2013 and Air India got it in 2014, so it was not very old, and the pilots were also experienced. Sumit Sabharwal had 8,200 hours of flying experience. He was the captain who issued the mayday call. So here also there might not have been a problem. The AAIB, or the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, is what is going to handle the case. It will appoint an investigator, then a team will collect evidence from the site and the black box will be recovered. An orange color box, it has 2 recorders. One is a data recorder and second one records sound. It records the sounds in the cockpit, and these recorders are made to survive such accidents because it is a key evidence. Then the evidence will be analyzed by experts and labs. A final report will be issued on what actually happened. To analyze this black box, they may take 2 to 3 weeks. After it's found, it may take months too. So what happens to the deceased now? It is a tragic incident. Tata Group, the parent company of Air India, has announced a 1 crore compensation for those who lost their life, coverage of hospital expenses for those who were injured, and also for the renovation and construction of the building where it crashed. Obviously, no amount of money can suppress the pain of losing someone, but they are doing their bit. Now, what happens to the airline and to the provider of this aircraft, Boeing? First, let's talk about Air India. It was a luxury after it was launched in 1930s by Tatas. Then in 1953, it was nationalized and its reputation took a hit. It racked up over 70,000 crore rupees in losses. And then in 2022, Tata took over the company again, the airline again, and that was not much of a help too because passengers had complaints, technical malfunctions, delays, and more. And the airline has been asked to submit a report on the health of all its aircrafts now after the crash. Now, these complaints are all over social media, the malfunctions of the aircrafts. In fact, there's one passenger who flew to Ahmedabad on the same flight had posted a video of AC not working in the flight or the in-flight entertainment was not working. But this is a social media claim, so we will stick to the fact. The impact will be huge on Air India. It will face scrutiny. Consumers may take other options because trust is lost now and insurance premiums will also hike. In January this year in Bengaluru, an Air India flight returned back because of an engine failure. In 2024, a flight from Delhi had to make an emergency landing in Russia, and the list is long, but these reasons were technical, oil leaks, and more. But such an accident is very rare in aviation, and Air India is trying to change it too. But it will take some time, and now they have to be quick. They have an order book of 570 jets from Airbus and Boeing, but this will take time to be delivered. Now, coming to Boeing, if you know aviation, two aircraft makers hold the duopoly, Airbus and Boeing. And Boeing has been facing scrutiny for some time now. People even said, if it's Boeing, I'm not going. But the choice is not yours, unfortunately. After the crash, its shares slumped around 5%. Boeing marketed this aircraft as a game changer. The Dreamliner has in total crossed nearly 5 million flights since it was launched. In 2024, a Boeing engineer made shocking claims that Boeing took shortcuts when manufacturing the 777 and 787 Dreamliner, and the risk could be catastrophic. Boeing obviously denied all these claims, but the whistleblower, he died in a mysterious death. In 2021 too, Boeing had halted deliveries of new Dreamliners. The FAA looked into the jets and it made changes in its manufacturing process, and then they were delivered. And Boeing has repeatedly come to the bad side in recent years. 737 MAX planes crashed, two of them in recent years. Emergency doors blew off mid-air, oxygen masks went missing, and whatnot happened. And the CEO was also forced to resign earlier. Now, we still don't know what happened to this aircraft, but if it is found to be an aircraft issue, then it will be bad for Boeing. But it will still have the market because there are not many alternatives. We'll bring you the latest updates, so stay tuned to the channel. In the Middle East, tensions have escalated. Israel carried out strikes on Iranian military and nuclear sites. This is fueling fears of a war in the Middle East. Israel on early Friday said that it struck Iran, and Iranian media said that explosions were heard in Iran as tensions mounted over US's efforts to win Iran's agreement to halt productions of material for an atomic bomb. Israel struck on Iran aimed at hurting its nuclear infrastructure and its ballistic missile factories and many military capabilities. US State of Secretary Marco Rubio said that the strikes were a unilateral act and Washington was not involved in it. Iran, meanwhile, has announced an emergency and it's preparing to retaliate, which raises risk of not just disruptions in the country but also in neighboring countries. Now, anything happens in Middle East means oil prices are hit. Oil prices rose by 12% on June 13th. West Texas Intermediate, which is the main US oil contract, soared 12.6% to $76.61 per barrel, while Brent North Sea crude jumped 12.2% at $77.77 per barrel. In other markets, stocks dived in early trade, led by a sell-off in US futures. Investors looked back at safe havens like gold and Swiss Swiss franc. Indian markets also were hit. Shares of oil marketing companies or OMCs fell. OMCs like Indian Oil Corporation declined by 4%, BPCL by 6.1%, HPCL by 5.3% in early trade. Experts say that since India relies on imports of over 80% of its crude oil needs, a conflict in the Middle East could lead to spike in Brent crude prices. Iran holds about 9% of the world's oil reserves, and any disruption could impact several stocks and companies and nations too, and impact oil prices mainly. Protests, loot, and deployment of military. This is how today's America looks like. We are talking about LA, Los Angeles. These protests are now spreading across US, San Francisco to NYC to Austin to Boston to Washington DC. It's spreading all over. So let's explore what led to these protests and why Trump's deployment of National Guard and Marines is being questioned. Now, Los Angeles is a city in California, the Silicon Valley, home to the biggest companies in the world, from Meta to Apple. California's GDP recently surpassed Japan's GDP. That's a state's GDP versus a country's GDP. So that's how it is important for the US, and that's how big it is. Now, talking about the protest itself, the protest started after the ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, carried out series of immigration sweeps across South California. Then a rumor spread that the federal agents are running after people in a parking lot of a Home Depot in Westlake neighborhood near the downtown LA. That was on June 6th. This is where many migrants are staying, and obviously that made them scared. Now, Paramount is where this rumor started and the protest started happening. While authorities say that there were no raids, it was too late by then. Last weekend, the protesters had spread, and these protests were mostly peaceful. Now, California is a democratic state, so it's an opposition state. It has 27.3% of migrant population. The governor said that the protests were under control and the state authorities were handling it. They arrested a few people too, but Trump still started to intervene. He did not consult the governor, Gavin Newsom, and had deployed the National Guard. He deployed some 2,000 troops on Saturday. That was last Saturday. Now, on last Sunday morning, there was absolute mayhem on the street. There were rubber bullets, cars set on fire, tear gas, and more. Even an Australian journalist was hit with a rubber bullet, and a British photographer was hit with a sponge bullet. The showdown was between the protesters and security officials, and it was real. Local officials declared a curfew, but the protesters defied the curfew and looted the stores. Trump then sent more security personnel, Marines, some 700 Marines. So a total of 4,000 National Guards were deployed, 700 plus Marines were deployed, and many police officers were deployed there. But is it even legal? What Trump did? Well, as per the law, he should have consulted the mayor and the state before taking this step, but he did not. So that's being questioned. This is the first time Marines have been deployed inside the US for a protest like this. Now, these Marines don't have the power to arrest or seize unless the president invokes the Insurrection Act. This act is for extreme situations, rebellious ones. He can deploy Marines if the government is under threat. So he did not invoke this act and deployed the Marines to protect federal buildings and the ICE offices. Local officials are questioning this deployment. The city's mayor is saying that it was not necessary. She says that they were being a part of an experiment. But Trump is standing by his decision and saying that till peace is not restored, these Marines will be deployed. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, says that Trump is exploiting his power and threatening democracy. Both parties are politicizing this protest. Now, the riots are spreading to other cities, so what's next? Well, the time could not be worse. This weekend, America is holding an army parade. It is also Trump's birthday. And protesters are going all out. They are bracing for a mega protest, more than 1,800 protests. And these are planned for the same day. The No Kings rallies organized by 50501 movement on June 14th. Texas has already been deployed with National Guards. So what's next will be seen on June 14th. Trump has a new baby problem, so he wants to solve it with money. America's fertility rate is declining, and that's not good for the country. Clearly, Elon Musk was not enough to make America populous again, with reports claiming that he might even have more than 100 children. That's a speculation, but it's a real problem, the declining fertility rate. So the administration has introduced Trump accounts in the One Big Beautiful Bill. What is this account? What will it do? And will it make people want to make babies? Here's a report.
Trump has unveiled a new initiative in the GOP tax bill. The bill will create Trump accounts for every U.S. citizen born between January 2025 to December 2028. Under the plan, the federal government will make a one-time $1,000 contribution into a tax-deferred account that tracks the overall stock market. So this is an investment account for toddlers. The investment is tax-free, and this account will track the stock market, and the profit will be added to the account. This account will be a private property controlled by the child's guardians. Parents can add up to $5,000 annually to this account. Children will be able to access some funds at the age of 18 for education, training, or first-time home purchase, and full access will be given at the age of 30. Trump says this program will give countless American children a strong financial start in life. He categorized it as a pro-family initiative that will help millions of Americans harness the strength of their economy to lift the next generation. Now, unlike the free withdrawals from 529 education plans and Roth IRAs, the Trump savings accounts will require post-tax contributions, and withdrawals will be taxed either as long-term capital gains or regular federal income, depending on how funds are used. Now, Trump is doing this to increase birth rate and fertility rate in the US. Fertility rate is the average number of births a woman is expected to have over her lifetime. It has been steadily declining since 2008 in the US. As per reports, the total fertility rate in 2023 was 1.6 births per woman, which is below the replacement level of 2.1 births per woman needed to sustain the population. Low birth rate means low labor, low young population, and more older people, which is not good for the economy. But will this baby bonus work? Mostly not. China has tried this, but their population has fallen for the third consecutive year. Many more countries are offering such incentives. The UN says that the world fertility rates are in unprecedented decline. India is the country with the highest population in the world, but fertility rates are dropping in India as well. So fertility is declining across the world. As per a UN survey, 39% people say that they are having fewer kids because of financial reasons, 22% because of housing problems, and 18% because of childcare costs. So this $1,000 baby bonus is not going to help because it's a one-time payment, and having a child is a long-term expense.
Now let's talk about Pakistan. They presented their budget this week. On the eve of the budget, they also released the economic survey. Just like in India, this survey is what the government presents, which is a picture of the year that was for the economy, basically how it performed, inflation data and GDP growth, and it shows the situation of the economy. And as well as we know Pakistan, it painted a rosy picture of its economy. It was carefully worded. It spinned a crisis as a comeback and tried to set the wrong narrative for the world, but the world should not buy it. So here's the real picture. First, what it said in the survey. They said that GDP grew by 2.7%, better than last year's negative growth. Then they said their inflation during the outgoing fiscal stood at 4.6%. They also highlighted a policy rate cut of 11% from 22% last year. They said that their exports were up 7%. Now let's talk about the reality. While the GDP grew, the picture of the country's over 240 million people is grim because they face deep structural distress. The slowing inflation, if true, is a sharp recovery, but the ground reality says something else. There is spiraling food prices, rupee crumbling, record energy costs, and joblessness everywhere. So the so-called easing inflation could just be a bait for IMF. Now the policy rate cut, an 11% from 22% looks good, but only on the paper because it's still high. A 7% export increase showing freelancers generating $400 million in earnings. Total IT exports hitting $3.1 billion. And this is a modest increase. Pakistan still relies on remittances, which surged to $38 billion. What this means is Pakistanis abroad are sending more money home as families are facing economic ruins. The current account was shown to be in surplus by $1.9 billion. This might calm investors, but it is not a result of a booming economy, but of suppressed imports, currency controls, and deferred payments. Pakistan's debt has increased to Pakistani rupees 76,000 billion in just 9 months of the current fiscal year, which is double in 4 years and fivefold in 10 years. This is 51,500 billion rupees from local banks and 24,500 billion from external ones. Now coming to the not so big budget. Pakistan's total spending is $62 billion, which is just a little over 10% of India's spending, 7% less than last year. Why? Because IMF had asked to cut down spending. So Pakistan did. But look at what happened. They increased their defense spending by 20%. 20% is a huge increase. $9 billion, which is 2.2% of its GDP. Now, the lower spending and a higher defense spending means that you cut on other expenses, which is more like the healthcare, infrastructure, government schemes and policies for the poor. So instead of focusing on the real issue, Pakistan is taking money from the ordinary people and giving it to the military. And this military is not poor. Reports say over 80% of Pakistan's elite, who are basically the military-run enterprises, large landlords and politically connected businesses, evade taxes. And who are these ordinary people who pay taxes? Well, 42% of Pakistanis are living in poverty. 11 million people are suffering from starvation. And all of this military spending for what? For wars that they never won and might never win in the future? But no one will call them out. Instead, they will facilitate them. The field marshal has been reportedly invited by US for the army parade on June 14th. That's just after Pahalgam attack by terrorists sponsored by Pakistan. Trump's tariffs are going to stay for now. This is what the US appeals court has said. It has said that while it's reviewing the lower court's decision to halt tariffs, they will be in place. But the process will speed up, the legal process. Now, these tariffs are causing pain for economies across the world, but Trump still hails them, saying that it will bring more revenue to the US. But experts are painting a different picture for the world and the US. Here's a report.
Global economic growth is on track for its weakest decade since the 1960s, said the World Bank. The new report by the World Bank cites President Donald Trump's trade as a major factor weighing on economies worldwide. It expects Trump's new tariffs on America's trading partners to bring the world's economic growth to its lowest level since the 2008 financial crisis, when discounting worldwide recessions. It said that it does not expect another global recession due to tariffs, but it also said that average global growth in the first 7 years of the 2020s will be slowest of any decade since the 1960s. It downgraded its expectations of global GDP growth this year to 2.3% from 2.7% earlier, it forecasted in January. This is based on the assumption that tariffs worldwide will remain at their late May levels. This means that the world economy will witness its weakest pace of growth in 17 years, including 2 global recessions. In 2009, after the financial crisis, global economic growth contracted by 1.3%, and during COVID pandemic in 2020, it contracted by 2.9% as per the World Bank data. It also cut its growth forecast for almost 70% of the economies worldwide, due to the turmoil unleashed by heightened trade tensions. The report further said that the anticipated slowdown in developing economies will also be influenced by long-running trends like ballooning government debt levels. The Chinese economy is forecast to see growth slow from 5% in 2024 to 4.5% this year and 4% in the next. The World Bank expects 20 European countries that share the euro currency to collectively grow just 0.7% this year, down from already lackluster 0.9% in 2024. India, though, is expected to be the world's fastest growing major economy, expanding at a 6.3% clip this year, but that's down from 6.5% in 2024 and 6.7% down the bank had forecast for 2025 in January. Japan is expected to accelerate this year, but that's only from 0.2% in 2024 to a sluggish 0.7% this year. Fitch also downgraded its outlook for global government bonds this year from a neutral status to deteriorating, citing the impact of tariff hikes and trade policy uncertainty. Recently, the US Appeals Court has also given a green light for the tariffs till it reviews the decision to block them by a lower court, so they remain in effect. While the negotiations are underway, the tariffs, their erratic implementation and unpredictability are hurting businesses, consumers, economies, and the US itself too.
Trump is hailing a truce with China. He claimed that Washington and Beijing have a done deal on trade, while China released a cautious statement saying a framework has been reached to implement a consensus reached between the two sides. So Trump is saying deal is done while China is keeping it low key. In a social media post, Trump said, and I quote, "Our deal with China is done, subject to final approval with President Xi and me." Now, China, on the other hand, has left no doubt that a full deal is still in works and the two leaders are yet to sign off on it. It said that the talks were quote-unquote professional, rational, in-depth, and candid. It added that two sides have, in principle, reached a framework for implementing consensus reached by two heads of the state during the phone call on June 5th and the consensus reached at the Geneva meeting. Now, for context, the US and China talks happened in London this week on 2 days. Both officials had met to talk trade, and more emphasis was on the export of rare earth and magnets from China, easing of restrictions basically. In Geneva last month, China and US had agreed to a 90-day suspension of most of the 100% plus tariffs on two countries and all of these tariffs that they imposed. However, US then alleged that China violated the terms of agreement and imposed restrictions on rare earth exports still. Now, while Chinese side has not disclosed any progress made in London, Trump has announced that full magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied upfront by China, and likewise, US will provide China what was agreed to, including the restrictions on visa for Chinese students entering the US after imposing restrictions on them. Now he says that he never had a problem with Chinese students. Trump said, and I quote, "We are getting a total of 55% tariffs and China is getting 10%. Now, what he's saying is that these London talks led to a breakthrough which investors are not buying because the reaction was very muted on the stock market on June 11th. The details were very vague and unclear. It's hard to say which side is backing down, while Trump insists that MAGA flock made China bend its knee before the great deal makers. Critics say that he has had to retreat in the trade war he initiated. However, it looks like China had an upper hand here because the restriction on rare earth means a production problem for everything that people use, from washing machine to EVs, electronics basically, and China's monopoly in this front is unbeatable as of now because it accounts for about 60% of global mine production and 90% of the processed and permanent magnet output. But now the bigger question is it a deal or no deal? Well, it's the same deal that was reached in Geneva, so the investors were also not very happy. Tariffs are still in, lesser but still there. So the trade war might not just be over yet. Hence the muted reaction from investors. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Apple had its Developers Conference 2025 this week. It was the WWDC. Expectations were on the roof From AI to innovation, investors and developers were betting on this event, but looks like it disappointed all of them. You probably have already seen these memes. The breakthrough innovation they could bring up was liquid glass. Apple says this will make the system experience more expressive and delightful. Now, this new design was crafted with a translucent material that reflects and refracts its surroundings while dynamically transforming to help bring greater focus to content. This is what Apple said. They said that it is their biggest redesign since 2013. But this redesign in the age of generative AI looks like Pakistan's budget, a cheap trick to make sure investors feel they are relevant. It's not me who's saying this, it's literally everyone who feels this. Investors too. The day the event took place, during the event itself, Apple lost $75 billion in market value and the stock fell 2.5%. What people want to know is what happened to Apple's intelligence. They announced the Apple Intelligence last year. They said Siri will become smarter, iPhones will transform, but in 2025, when all the other companies are focusing on AI, it looks like Apple has lost the plot. Apple says it needs more time. Google's Gemini, Meta AI, your Microsoft AI, OpenAI all have come out with life-changing models, writing mails, messages and essays. Meanwhile, Apple has launched liquid glass. 3 weeks ago, Google's event took place, the 2025 event. AI mode was in search that was announced. Gemini 2.5 was updated. AI was like the keyword of the event. So why is Apple lagging behind? Well, Apple has always been cautious and it has been working for them till now. But now they are way behind their competitors. Tim Cook, who took over Apple from Steve Jobs, has turned it into the world's first $3 trillion company. It's a corporate success, but an inventor's failure. Every new update has been just okay. A thinner phone, a brighter screen. Well, consumers want more now. Its board also thinks the same. They say AI could make iPhone obsolete in 10 years. Having said that, iPhone has still been selling. People are buying it as a status symbol or for the trust they have in the company or for whatever reason. But looks like now it has to start taking risks because let's face it, earlier Apple's developer events looked like a real party. There was innovation that people thought they'd never needed. But now it's just losing the plot while competitors are much ahead in the AI race. UK is tightening its immigration rules, but another trend is popping up and it's not looking very good. Citizens of UK are exiting the country. What could have led to this? The country was once the hub. Everyone wanted to be there, but what happened suddenly? Here's a report.
While the UK is tightening immigration rules for foreigners, as it's dealing with the influx of refugees, a new trend has emerged in the country. Reports say 513,000 people exited the country in 2024. As per reports, people of all ages are leaving the UK. And one of the major reasons for this is that the UK is getting more and more expensive to live in. Brits in the country are dealing with high rents, high childcare costs and high taxes. Some of the locals say that other European capitals like Paris, Berlin or Madrid are not as costly as London. More and more people, especially ones who do not own properties, are leaving the country. Reports say that even entrepreneurs are seeking to take their businesses elsewhere to minimize the capital gains tax bills. The recent changes in the country's long-term residence rules have also fueled this trend among British nationals who are leaving the country to avoid inheritance tax on non-UK assets. Reports also say that many are worried about the UK's unstable economy, especially in the wake of post-Brexit challenges. While the country is known for its welfare schemes, the funds come from taxpayers' money, and these taxes are increasing year by year, burdening the Brits and business owners. Now people are seeking countries with favorable tax regimes and mostly moving to the Middle East, like Dubai. There is also high inflation. Prices of essentials and housing have made life unaffordable in the UK. And along with that, there is a housing crisis too. Many youngsters are struggling to buy houses in the UK, especially in London where there is shortage of affordable housing and you pay high rent too. While the healthcare system is lauded around the world for its affordability, there are long queues, and the quality is also declining, leading to people getting frustrated. So people simply want a more stable, peaceful, and fulfilling life. As per a recent British Council survey, nearly 3/4 of 18 to 30-year-olds in the UK would consider living and working in another country in the short or long term.
That's all for this week, and for more such news and views, keep watching ET Now. We'll bring you the latest updates on the news across the world and India.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.